Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar for digital advertising for political campaigns. I'm Craig from NGP Van. We have Colin with us from ePolitics. We're going to do just a little bit of housekeeping, and then we're going to get started in a minute or two. It's just about noon. Want to be respectful of everyone's time. We have some participants jumping on, so it'll just take about a minute or so for people to jump on. We have a packed schedule today. We have a lot of material to get through. So we're going to try to keep it moving pretty briskly. And then Colin will jump on to introduce himself, and we're going to get rolling right away. So maybe just like one more minute as participants join, because I can see they're still joining, which is great. And then we'll get rolling. Colin, if you want to jump on the next slide real quick, we'll jump into the housekeeping.
Oh, yeah, happy to.
Cool. Okay, so we always get asked, are we recording this session? The answer is yes, we're recording the session. So this video will be recorded, or is being recorded, I should say. And as a follow-up to all of our webinars, when people register, we make sure that we send out a copy of the presentation. That's the deck that we're going to be reviewing right here. We also send a copy of the video. Kurt is saying my volume is low. Okay, let me try to turn up my volume. Give me 1 second. Is that better, Kurt? Is this volume a little bit better? Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate you popping that in there. We are going to record this session, and we're going to follow up with the deck, a copy of maybe a PDF, a video, and any questions that get asked today will get answered during this session. If we don't answer them, or we need to follow up, like, might ask a question that we don't know, Colin may want to expand on something or provide additional resources, we can do that. So we'll go there. Dr. Melanie is saying my audio is still difficult to hear. Can everyone hear my audio or no? Yes, no?
I can hear you.
All right.
For what
How
it's
about
worth.
Colin's audio? Is that coming through okay? Because he's going to be doing most of the talking. Go ahead, Colin. Why don't you say hello?
Hi, everybody. Very happy to be with you today.
Okay, good. Perfect. Okay, so Colin's good. Hopefully I'm good. I'll try to talk. I have a mic on here. Great. So any questions that get left unanswered, we will make sure to send them in an email. We also like to add closed captioning and things like that. So we typically add that to it as well. So 2 things I also want to mention. We have a chat, right? So that's the normal webinar chat. And then we have a Q&A. So if you have questions, drop them in the Q&A. If you want to just do regular chit chat, put that into the chat session. So that's the perfect place to go there. Technical questions, audio, things like that, just drop it in the chat. I'm watching the chat. So to start off, and Colin's going to get us rolling and we're going to move here, but to start off, tell us who you are, tell us where you're from, like if you're from a campaign or a state party or a county party, or if you're just from a PAC or some other organization, let us know and drop that in the chat. Just drop it anywhere, and here, I'll send a note. You can put it here. Perfect. Great. Kurt from Oklahoma City. Thank you, Kurt. Monica. Right. Perfect. So, and then Barry, thank you for adding that. If anyone wants us to cover anything in particular, we may be able to get to some of it, but I know Colin's got a packed thing here, so we'll try to do as much as we can, and we'll keep rolling. So perfect. Oyster Bay. Wow, I grew up in Fort Jet, not too far away. That's funny. Although I'm in South Carolina right now. Cool. Okay, so let's get rolling. I want to introduce very quickly Colin, and then let him, continue to introduce himself on the next slide. But Colin and I have been friends for a while. We've done a couple webinars together. He's really a fantastic person, and he's steeped in knowledge about politics, particularly digital politics. He's got what book version are you on now, Colin?
This is the 10th edition.
10th version. So. Wow. One of the first ways I met Colin was off his book, which was really fantastic, which you'll talk about in a second. But I'll let him go from here, and then we'll just jump right in.
Well, thanks, Craig. Thanks for the kind words. And definitely thank you, NGP Van, for having me today. I've known, folks at NGP for a long time, and I've used many of the other, technologies in the Bonterra family of Salsa, Every Action. I've used them on projects in the past. So It is great to be with y'all. And our topic today, as you might guess, is digital advertising for specifically for campaigns and particularly for down ballot and local campaigns. So state legislature, mayor, city council, school board, things where you are working relatively close to home and often where the budgets are a whole lot smaller. So we're going to be talking about a lot of ways that digital advertising can help you reach the voters you need to reach in a highly targeted and cost-effective way. So with that, let us dive in. So we're going to look at why we advertise, the typical goals you might see. We're going to run through a lot of considerations that, like for instance, targeting options, budgets, that kind of thing. And then we're going to drill down into some of the specifics of different flavors of digital ads. And some of them are more accessible than others, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But first of all, who's this guy? So I have been involved in politics. I got my start working as a staffer for a member of the Texas legislature, one of the last Democrat to hold that seat for a long time. It was a rural seat, but it was a highly educational experience. And I really recommend any opportunity you have to either run for state ledge or mayor or city council. I think that you learn so much more when you are working with local issues than you have much less of an opportunity to get things done, I think, in Congress, where the closer to home you're working, I think, one, it's really educational, and two, I think you can really get a lot of good work done. So I'm a digital strategy consultant. I'm an advocate myself. As you might guess, I do a lot of digital advertising. I place ads and help people with strategy as well. For a long time, I've been editing epolitics.com. It took a hiatus for a while, but I'm getting it restarted. I also write at campaigns and elections, and there is the cover of my ebook. You can find that at epolitics.com, as you might guess. You can download a PDF, and if you do, I'll send you a link every year to the latest version. You can also get it in the Kindle store. And
for what it's worth here, sorry to interrupt, Colin.
Oh yeah.
I'm some people who've attended our webinars. I'm a local elected official in a town called Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and when I was running. There aren't a ton of resources out there for down ballot, especially local campaigns. And Colin's book was instrumental for me when I was running for my first office. So for what it's worth, it's a fantastic book.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And rewriting this thing every year forces me to keep up with things. So it's very valuable that way for me too. And the last part of the bio, I also play bass in a kick-ass rock and roll band here in DC. You can see us September 29th, right in Mount Pleasant, DC. So let's get going with the advertising. So as I said, I got started, my political start was in the Texas Ledge. And in Texas, politics is played as a contact sport. So you get a very pragmatic approach to getting things done. And that will, I think, suffuse every part of this presentation. Ultimately, if something isn't going to move votes, you need to ask yourself, why are you doing it? Lots of bright, shiny objects out there to distract us. But remember, election day, we need 50% of the electorate plus one vote. And that is the goal. So why do we advertise online? That's a great question. Here's why. That's where the people are, right? Just about everybody who is online at all can be reached in some way via some advertising channel, whether it's Facebook or online video on a sports site or a local media website. Advertising provides really highly targeted ways to reach these people, as we're going to go into in detail. So why we advertise online, here are some sample goals. Sometimes we're list building. For down ballot candidates in particular, name recognition, right? That is a huge factor for people running for state ledge and below. Of course, often trying to raise money or recruit volunteers or sell t-shirts. You may just be trying to get people to go to an event. You may be boosting a Facebook event or something like that, trying to get people to a rally or to a Zoom call even. You can also highlight news stories. This is something, if there's a positive development in the local press, positive story, put it on your Facebook page and then put a little boost behind it to help people in your area see it. And also that gives you an outside validator. You can also reinforce fundraising. One thing that more and more people are doing is when you are going to send a fundraising email to people, you can target them. Now, again, these are people who are on your own list. You can target them with digital ads beforehand and afterwards to try to boost that. And you can do the same thing with field organizing. And of course, we're going to persuade likely voters, right? You know, a lot of our work is GOTV, getting our vote out, but there are some folks who are going to vote regardless of what we do. And getting your candidate's name or your name in front of them is really important. And of course, turning out the less likely voters. And like I said, we're going to go into detail about all of these. Now, sometimes if you are like the Russians in 2016, you might have unconventional goals, like you are just trying to, you know, sow disarray and unhappiness. This is literally an ad that the Russians ran in 2016. I doubt it had the slightest effect on the election in any way, but I am transfixed by this image. It's something else. So, more typical examples of some ads. Here are a bunch of ads from Democrats. Video ads, boosted Facebook posts. Over on the right there is a banner for the Martin O'Malley campaign, which some of you may remember from 2016. In that case, it was a list building ad, right? The Biden video at the bottom there, that's a fundraising ad. So you can see some of the some of the things that people might be trying, some of the goals people might have just right here in these examples. And this is just a taste. We're going to see a lot more coming up. So for campaigns in particular, things really break down. Your strategy depends on when you are, right? At the campaign launch, at the beginning, you want to be ready to take full advantage. You want to have your, have your Facebook page up, your Twitter feed if you're going to have one, your Instagram page if you're going to have one. You need your mass email system like NGP or Every Action. You need something like that in place on your website so that if anyone hears about you and goes to your website, you have a chance to catch them. You have a chance to turn a fleeting moment into an enduring connection. So you're building name recognition, you're building your lists, you're recruiting people, you're starting your events. A good idea now at this stage is to already have Google ads up, targeting people who are searching for you or for your opponents. And there's an Amy Klobuchar example there to the right. I have another good example from Ted Cruz, but that's Ted Cruz, and I'm not giving him any airtime. Now, that was just the beginning, right? So now we're in the mid period. This is maybe in the 3 to 4 months before the election, before we get to early voting. But when you're really chugging along and trying to build the structures you're going to need for the fall. And you're still doing a lot of the same things: name recognition, volunteer recruiting, fundraising, list building. But you may also be targeting very specific parts of the electorate. For instance, I was working in a state Senate primary in Virginia a couple of months ago. And because of the demographics of the districts, we were focusing our advertising on African-American women aged 45 and up, because the folks we were working with, that was the audience that they were specifically trying to turn out. So you may be running more general ads to build name recognition, but you might supplement them with ads that are really designed to get your name out in front. You may also be trying to, take the shine off the other guy with a little bit of negative advertising. And then, of course, as I talked about earlier, supporting field organizing, supporting fundraising, using the ads to prepare the ground in a way before your canvassers go talk to people. Actually, a friend of mine saw that in action last year in 2022. She was in upstate New York, and she was bombarded for a few days with ads for a Democratic state legislative candidate. And then that candidate knocked on her door. And my friend was very excited to talk to her because she had been seeing those ads. So again, this is something that I don't think enough people even know about or think about, but I think it's a great way to try to get the most out of, basically to have the channels work together. So, and then we're getting to GOTV. So now you've probably got a split strategy. You are going to be targeting people who are consistent voters who are probably going to be leaning in at least somewhat in your direction. You know they're going to go to the polls, so you want to build name recognition. But you're super targeting, you're really putting your push on people who are almost certainly going to vote for you, but who may need a nudge to vote. And if you do a lot of field organizing, this strategy will sound very familiar because these are probably the same people that you're targeting with your field campaign. Now, you're still probably raising money, recruiting volunteers, you're still getting people to events and reinforcing the field, but your advertising is really going to be pushing name recognition among consistent voters, and then really pushing the folks who are going to vote for you if they vote, but they need a little push. And there's an example at the bottom right from a project called the Hometown Project that I work with that recruits celebrities with personal ties to down ballot districts and gets the celebrities to record videos for the Democratic candidate. And then I get to run the advertising. So it's great fun. And that there is Ernie Hudson, the fourth Ghostbuster from the original movie, and a true hero to me. I am a huge Ernie Hudson fan. So let us move on now. So we've covered why, some typical goals, and then we've covered how the time breakdown works. But there's also the money. If you're a presidential campaign, you can do everything, right? Most of us don't have that much luck. So for smaller budgets, in the thousands or even hundreds, not millions, focus on the basics, focus on the essentials, name recognition, and then pushing the people who need the push, people who need the encouragement to get to the polls. This is the point where that question comes in. If somebody's like, oh, let's do a bunch on TikTok, you should ask, are the voters we need to reach on TikTok, and is TikTok the best way to reach them? So
just as a real quick note here, Colin, too.
Yeah.
We had done a webinar not too long ago where we talked about Pew Research Center has been tracking the demographics and the audience base of every social network since its inception. So I'm going to share that link here. If you're looking for women over the age of 60, Pew will literally tell you where that audience is. If you're looking for college kids with, a certain type of education, Pew will tell you which social network focuses on that demographic. So I found that to be really helpful. I'll paste that link in the chat here in just a moment.
That sounds like a great resource. I'll also just encourage you to talk to people, ask people where they get their information, right? Because there may be a local source that you don't know about. Maybe there's a back channel neighborhood Facebook group, right? Where people are talking about local politics, or local media websites. And I'm going to cover that a little bit more as we go. But yeah, so the targeting options for digital advertising can really help extend that budget. For example, just about every tool that's designed specifically for politics, every advertising tool is going to have some kind of voter file, or at least district level targeting. You don't, especially if you're in one of those convoluted gerrymandered districts, you could spend money on television, but the vast majority is going to be, spent on people who are not in your district and can't vote for you. But the political tools can let you focus on your district specifically, but also on specific voters within the district or specific demographics within the district. So as we go on, so where do ads come from? Well, if about 3 or 4 months ago, people might have said, well, artificial intelligence, the robots, they're going to be turning out all of our advertising. That really hasn't come to pass so far. However, I will note that AI can, the AI chatbots like ChatGPT, actually, they theoretically don't allow bulk political content, but people do it all the time anyway. Things like that can help you come up with ideas, right? You can start with one ad idea and ask the chatbot to give you 5 more. And sometimes it'll come up with things that you wouldn't have. Sometimes it can give you good ideas. But so far, the AIs are not taking over from us just yet. And I have a funny feeling that's not happening anytime soon. So if you're working on down ballot campaigns as a consultant or a staffer, I think your job prospects are still pretty good there. So, but where do they really come from? And this is the hard part. This is a question I get a lot. How do I come up with the content itself? Of course, internal brainstorming in your own team to come up with ideas. You're already doing this for television. If you have television, you're probably doing this for field scripts. The same kind of considerations that go into the rest of your outreach can also go into your advertising. Now, to get the sometimes, like with this one that I have, example I have up, you may just be sharing something on Facebook that somebody else created, and you're going to put some money behind it because it'll help your campaign if that piece of content is more visible. But often we'll have to go to a graphic designer, or for video, a video designer. If you have a general consultant, they will probably have people that they have worked with. If you have a digital firm specifically, they certainly will have folks who, if they don't have them in-house, they will have folks that they work with. And then I'm going to talk about a self-serve platform in a second. In some cases, you can just use templates from one of your vendors. You may also be getting content from partners, from from volunteers, from your own supporters. Some of them may be very talented and able to help you with content. You may be promoting content that's put out by an ally or an allied organization. Of course, that kind of thing. Check the rules on the level of coordination you are allowed to have. And then of course, the robots. So, but most often you're going to be internal brainstorming in your own team. And then you may have graphic designers or video producers who are going to actually get the content together to be put online. So are there any questions right now so far, Craig?
No, we've handled the questions so far, and I dropped a couple other links in chat. I just put the Pew social media fact sheet there, where you can see the different demographics for the different social channels, and figure out the best place for you to go. And they've tracked everything since inception. If you all remember Google Plus, it's actually still there.
I had a Google. I think I still have a Google Plus account somewhere. Okay, so I want to focus early. I want to have a special little aside here about a particular category of ads that I think down ballot especially people don't really know much about. And they call these programmatic ads. These are ads that target a person rather than the website that they're on. So these aren't showing up. Actually, they're not showing up on most social sites. But programmatic ads will show up on news sites, sports sites, fashion sites, entertainment sites, pretty much wherever people go online that isn't Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. And the political systems almost always have some level of voter targeting built in. Otherwise, why have them for politics, right? So if you remember Zappos, the online shoe retailer, used to be really big on these, that if you ever went to the Zappos website, those ads would follow you around all over the place. You would see them constantly on other websites. Those were programmatic ads, and they were targeting you because you had visited that website. The great thing is that these are relatively cost effective, and they are, you build them, as you can see in the bottom right, for banners or for video. They're in standard sizes, so you don't have to create a bunch of different versions of an ad for different properties. And now I'll talk about it in a second, but for really sophisticated campaigns, everyone's going to go through a vendor just about, right? Someone like me or someone like your digital consultant or your media firm that would be placing these. But there is a self-serve platform called democraticads.com. And I believe, yes, I have a link to it there. Democratic, or not a link, but I type it out there. Democratic ads, again, the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, the DLCC, has recommended them for years. I think the minimum buy is in the neighborhood of like $250. So you can take a video, a 30-second or a 15-second or a 6-second video, or you can take a static banner ads like I showed a second ago, and target very specific slices of the electorate in your district. And this is and they have content templates you can use. That you also have self-serve platforms for things like Facebook, LinkedIn, Google itself. But campaign staff have a whole lot of things to do, and it may well make more sense to outsource the digital ad placement, particularly because these things have a little bit of a learning curve. It's not immediately intuitive how to set up a multivariate test of content, even in Facebook. So sometimes you'll be running these yourself, or your nephew who's helping out your campaign will be running them, or a staffer will be doing it. Other times your media vendor or your digital vendor will do it. But yeah, I really would love to encourage you guys to at least take a look at democraticads.com. It is very useful.
I want to pop up this poll real quick just to get a pulse
great.
of. So I'm going to pop up a poll on screen real quick just to get an understanding of who here has run digital ads before. So if you want to just click yes or no, and there's no right or wrong answer. We're just trying to get a pulse of the people on the line who have run ads, who haven't run ads, that kind of thing. And then we have 2 more questions. I'll put them up a little bit down the road.
Yeah, this is great. No, this is a nice mix. So I tried to set this thing up so that, or set up the presentation so that if you're somewhat experienced, there are things that may be new to you in it. And if you've never done this before, so it'll still be approachable.
And then just one more quick poll. I'm going to launch this for those who have. This is just for the ones who have run ads. What type of ads have you run? Just curious. Facebook or some of the other social medias like we've been talking about, Twitter, TikTok. Have you done programmatic or even Google programmatic video, or even streaming, or maybe just Google some of the search ads like Colin's first note? He popped up a text-based ad for Amy Klobuchar. Just real quick on that.
Yeah, actually more. Yeah, no, this is about what I would have expected. By far, the most approachable for these are Facebook ads, because you can just push the boost button. You can do far more sophisticated things too, but you can just push the boost button and get that ad out in front of your supporters in particular, but also people who may not know you. I would also point out that for Facebook in particular, Facebook, advertising is potentially very useful, but having your supporters share your content is probably even better, because then you're getting the social validation from it. So you can text people a link to a piece of content to share. You can email them a link to a piece of content to share, but your supporters are your ambassadors in their own social circles. So
just a real quick note here on the importance of the demographics and really trying to figure out where your audience is and what you're trying to accomplish with your ad. But I'll mention that, when I started, I did this myself. I ran Facebook ads, I ran Twitter ads, I ran Google search ads. And as you get to the point where you have more resources, sometimes it's better to put that with a vendor like Colin. This is not, just saying, hey, use one person in particular, but obviously Colin's very smart, but there are other vendors that specialize in certain types of ads, and they can do different things, right? Like, so you noticed here, everyone is sharing on social media. There might be some social media audiences, or there might not be your audience on a particular social media site, which would maybe warrant general searches on Google or text-based ads, or even video streaming if you know that's where your audience is. So it's really important to understand your audience and how to reach them, because if you're just trying to go on one social media stream and your audience is not there, you're going to be wasting money.
Yep, I agree. All right, so we have let's see, what have we covered so far? Why we're going to advertise, where the content comes from, how to buy ads, at least an overview. And let's talk about something that I think gets ignored again way too much, the landing page, right? So the ads start, especially if you're trying to recruit people to join your email list or follow you on social media, or give you their phone number for text messaging. The ad starts the process, but the landing page seals the deal. So the example I have here off to the left, you have a Hillary Clinton ad with the photo of her in the red, and you'll notice that the sign me up button is red. Action buttons are generally red or sometimes other bright colors, but the human eye seems to be drawn to red in particular. When you clicked on that ad, you ended up on the landing page there. Note the simplicity. All they're asking for is email address and zip. They're going to ask for more information later, but you want to make this sign-up process as easy as possible for people. Don't put obstacles in front of people. Don't make them think. Make it as easy as possible. So the landing page echoed the colors. It echoed the photograph. By comparison, the website's general, if you just went to the website and clicked the join the campaign button, you landed on a landing page with a different photo. So typically you're going to want to have continuity between the ad and the landing page. Now, if you're just running programmatic banner ads for name recognition or programmatic video for name recognition, you're not really trying to convert people necessarily, but you're still going to send them somewhere. So pay attention to the landing page and make sure it's as easy to use as possible. Test on mobile phones, absolutely. Make sure everything works on mobile. So yes, that is landing pages. So now we're going to get down to the fun stuff. How do we reach the voters we need to reach? And as Craig was talking about, step one is understanding who you need to reach, right? So for down ballot campaigns, geo-targeting is particularly important because you don't want to be wasting ads on people who have no ability to vote for you. On things like LinkedIn or on Facebook, you can do on Facebook, Instagram. I'm going to use Instagram and Facebook together because you buy the ads from the same Facebook interface. But you can target people who are interested in particular things. Right now, for a small marine conservation group, I am running ads that target commercial fishermen specifically in a handful of ports in the Gulf, in the Northeast, and on the West Coast. Audiences that are in the tens of thousands. That's an example of interest targeting. We're trying to recruit the people who are out on the water, making their living off the water. We're trying to recruit them for marine conservation. So you can also do demographic targeting. I mentioned African-American women over 45 in that district in Virginia that I was working on. Sometimes you may be targeting younger people. Sometimes the platform that you're doing, like Craig has alluded to, like if will do the demographic targeting for you. If you're if you're doing things on TikTok, TikTok advertising is a little tricky. I'm not sure if you can officially use it. I don't think you can actually do TikTok advertising for politics, but Instagram is going to skew younger as well. And if you buy ads on Facebook and Instagram and you just let Facebook allocate the budget based on where people are, if you're targeting younger people, your content will naturally flow more to Instagram. If you're targeting people over 50, it's going to naturally flow more to Facebook. You can also target what we call a custom audience, and folks who do a lot of Facebook advertising are probably familiar with this. That custom audience may be a voter file export. It may be your own donor list, right? You may, as I mentioned earlier, you may target the people on your donor list with appeals that are, designed to get them to give money in the moment, if they will, but they're also designed to prepare the ground for that fundraising email you're going to send. And then, of course, as I've talked about a lot, voter file targeting is baked into a lot of these platforms. With Facebook, voter file targeting is a lot tougher because voter file often does not have email addresses or mobile numbers. And that is what Facebook uses for custom audience targeting. So with a custom audience, you basically have a spreadsheet with names, address, emails, and zip codes, whatever you have on people. You upload it to Facebook, and then Facebook tries to match that with its users. But it's not perfect. Sometimes I've gotten a 1/3, Facebook doesn't tell you what your match rate is, but I've been able to extrapolate and find that maybe a third or of the half of the people are actually matched. So, but you can also upload custom audiences into other platforms like the programmatic ads I was talking about. So, but voter file targeting, again, built into most political platforms, and then targeting based on behavior. Now, this is an example of where those Zappos ads are a good example. You can install what's called a Facebook Pixel or a Google Pixel on your website. If someone comes to your donation page, for example, but then does not complete the donation, you might well target them with online ads afterwards, trying to get them to complete the donation. That's an example. We call that retargeting, and I'll have a slide on that a little later. But it's targeting based on people's past behavior. And again, I only have time to just touch on these things. There are, online tutorials, online overviews. If you Google any of these topics, you'll find a lot more. And then, of course, I'll talk to anybody. Yeah, give you a call, and I'm happy to chat for a bit. But your digital vendor or your general campaign vendor should also know more about all of these options. So let's talk about a few specific ones. And to the right there, you have an example of a state Senate district that wraps around Richmond, the south of Richmond, Virginia, and Petersburg. And I have a cat who is trying to distract me. So now I'm back. So a lot of times you're just targeting cities, counties, and states. Cities and states are easy in Facebook, for example. You may also be targeting a list of zip codes. I one time targeted zip codes in about 200 rural counties mostly in the Midwest around. We're trying to recruit people who supported wind energy out there. So we were targeting zip code, or we were targeting counties that had particularly high, they were good candidates for wind. But most often, if you're not just targeting a city or a county, you're going to be targeting your own district. And you can see the squiggly edges of that district there. This is an example of how these political targeting tools can help you get the people who are inside those lines and not waste money on the people who are outside those lines. One can also geofence. For instance, way back in the day, I remember Michelle Bachmann geofenced the Minnesota State Fair so that people at the state fair would see ads for her on their phones. And again, this is pretty sophisticated. You're going to have to work through a vendor or your consultant on this one. But there are times, rallies, for example, you might geofence the other guy's rally, right? And have your ads running on the phones of people who came to his or her event. Yeah. So again, just a hint of the kind of strategies you can do. Then demographic targeting, as we've talked about, age, race, gender, but also whether someone's a registered voter or not. If you're doing a voter registration campaign, you're probably going to be targeting people who are not registered to vote. But generally, campaigns are targeting registered voters. A couple of measures that I love. Most of the programmatic systems that I use have voter propensity, which is an estimate. It's basically a data model, but it estimates somebody's likelihood of showing up to vote. So if I have a limited budget, I'm probably not going to spend it on the people who I know are going to vote for me and I know they're going to turn out, right? People who are like 90% likely to show up at the polls. I'm going to focus my money on people who need a nudge to go to the polls, right? People in that maybe 40 to 70% range. And then I'm going to look at the partisan score to make sure that I'm targeting people who are almost certainly going to agree with me. You can also target digital consumption in some platforms, meaning that you can focus your money on people who are going to see your ads regularly. And I will note that for digital advertising, over a 2-week period, you're probably going to try to get somebody to see your ad 15 or 20 times. That's how much it takes for it to sink in. I've seen data from randomized control tests, and you don't really see much effect from 1, 2, 3, 4 ads. You start to see an effect with 12, 15, 18 ads. So If you have a limited budget, you can target people who are online a lot, meaning that they'll have a chance to see your ad more times. But again, these are built into the more sophisticated platforms. But voting propensity, partisan score, if you use the van, these are kind of factors that you can search on in the van, and then you can do an export from the van and target people as a custom audience, as I mentioned. Here we go. Custom audiences. Sometimes you'll be targeting donor lists. You might, I am not a fan of buying email lists and spamming them, but you can buy email lists and then turn those people into targets for advertising. And that is perfectly ethical. And it's not going to boomerang on you like spamming people can and often will. Data models, as we've talked about already, particular characteristics of voters, demographic groups, people who are more likely to support. And then with the custom audiences, that's the spreadsheet you see right there. That's an actual voter file export from Michigan.
I do want to mention real quickly, Colin, the note you mentioned about buying lists or things like that, and then advertising to them. Much better. Totally agree with what you said there. We did something at Netroots related to, and you and I have done something related to how to build a list ethically. And we have that webinar. If anyone's interested, we'll include it in the link when we send out the copy. But the important thing here is if you get a list of people who you bought, or even if you use, other sources, and you want to send that out, ads are a great way to shoot them an introductory message, because the people who respond to ads are going to be engaged rather than just interrupting them with an email where they might spam you and kills your deliverability ratings. Adding that as a ad is great, because then they can respond, and then they're responding positively to your ad, going to your email list or going directly to your website, where they then join your email list. That's a great way to expand your list, and also you could use that for fundraising or just to get more people on your list after the ads. So I just wanted to follow up on that.
Yeah, no, thank you for amplifying that. This is really important. I cannot stress too much that buying a list of names or a list of email addresses and spamming them is likely to boomerang back on you. It has a negative effect potentially on all of the rest of the emails you send out to people who do want to hear from you. But yes, uploading that donor list as a custom audience is perfectly ethical and often very effective. Okay, so retargeting I already touched on. This is when someone, say, has gone to your website, and sometimes you're going to try to make lightning strike twice. So you're going to try to hit them with ads afterwards. And again, that is something probably to talk to your consultants about. Whoops. Now we're getting into the different kind of digital ads here. And you can see pretty quickly that this gets complicated fast. I'm not going to go through this exhaustively. I mean, you guys know what Google search ads are. The programmatic ads are generally going to be banner ads, like the O'Malley one to the right. They're going to be pre-roll video. That means, like, I'm on a sports website and I'm going to watch a video. Your video ad shows up before. They basically have to watch your ad to see the video they actually want to see. Nowadays, we're also often teaming that with connected TV, which is just streaming ads. And also you can buy these programmatically, right? The same vendor that you're using for your video and banner ads probably has CTV now. And this will be running on things like Peacock, Paramount Plus, I think, Freevee on Amazon. There are just lots of different streaming services now that do advertising. I think Hulu you have to approach separately, but programmatic, the programmatic vendors can get you most of the other platforms there. I want to note LinkedIn ads, particularly if you are in a profession like a teacher or a nurse or a doctor or an engineer. LinkedIn ads can be really good for targeting people in that same profession, because you can target people by job title or industry. I do a training for doctors who may run for office every year, and we tend to talk to encourage them to look at LinkedIn, for example. Facebook, we've already talked a lot about. Media websites. My friend Lauren Miller, who's worked for Elizabeth Warren for years, she likes to talk this up on panels. But if you have local media websites like local newspaper, local TV station, or even radio station, things that are posting local news, you can often buy all the ads on the front page. We call it a takeover. You can buy all those ads for a relatively low price, and you may make a splash when you do it. Like a good day to do that might be the first day of early voting, for instance, or the 2 or 3 days before the election. But yeah, homepage takeovers is the term of art. But you would, in a case like this, you would contact the radio station or the TV station directly to do that, or to talk about how to do the takeover. You can also look for specialized publications. Sometimes they'll take what's called sponsored content. You have something that looks like a news story, but it's really written by you and it's an ad. They're usually set apart in some way so that it's clear, at least somewhat clear, that they're ads. That's a little more specialized. But you may also be looking at podcasts or influencers in your area. If the Daily Kos group blog is Daily Kos, KOS, has been around for 20 plus years, and they often raise a lot of money for down ballot Democrats. So you may want to connect, you may want to run an ad on Daily Kos in your area to try to find local activists or local donors. And Twitter, digital radio, Pandora, Spotify, at least if I remember correctly, does not allow political ads. Pandora does. It can be a little tough to get the repetitions, though. They often have limits on how often they're going to play your particular ad, and it might only be once a day. So it can be hard to hit people enough times for it to matter. But it's still potentially part of a balanced breakfast. Especially if you're running local radio ads on over the air in your area. And again, radio is often very cheap, and it naturally breaks down demographically. Spanish language, or Christian radio, or country versus hip hop, right? You can get demographic breakdowns just by targeting particular channels. And often, if you're running radio ads, they'll throw in ads on their website as well. So as part of the package. So now I'm going to drill down a little deeper into a few things and talk about the trade-offs involved. Then we're going to do some best practices, and if I have time, we'll look at a couple of other things in more detail. So here's like the trade-offs involved. Should I say I have $1,000? Do I want to spend that on video ads, ads that are going to run on many, many different websites and target the voter? Or should I put that money into social media? And you can see here the pluses and minuses of the various things. Video ads are good for name recognition. They're not as good for fundraising or building your list. But you can run them a whole lot of times, and they're often pretty cost effective. Social ads, they are local, right? You're going to be, you're going to be in the places where your voters are spending their time online, like on Facebook or Instagram. They're good for audience building, keeping your supporters engaged over time, sometimes niche targeting, certainly name recognition, maybe fundraising. They're great for featuring volunteers and supporters. Like a quick 30-second interview, one of your supporters talking about why they volunteered for the campaign and how much it means to them. This is something that I don't see campaigns do nearly as often as they could. Social ads, though, they're just working less and less well over time. They're costing more over time. It's hard to match with the voter file. A Facebook ad campaign is rarely going to hit the same person more than 3 or 4 times. So you often have to relaunch the ads. And then you have all these verification hoops to jump through. So it's not that spend your money on social and don't spend it on video, or the other way around. It's here are the considerations that would go into the decision about how to allocate the budget. I'll have a sample budget in a sec.
Colin, there's one question that I just answered in the chat, but maybe you could speak to this quickly. I know we're running late on time here,
yeah.
but someone asked if if there were streaming platforms that don't run political ads, or like Peacock, can you get political ads on those big streaming platforms like that?
Almost all of them. Yeah, they have not. They're not cracking down on the political stuff. They're happy to take your money in most cases. Yeah.
Thanks.
So, yeah. No, great. So I just want to talk streaming ads versus programmatic video, because this is a decision that I have to make this fall, and so it's very much on my mind. Pre-roll, these are the ones that are going to run on many different websites. They're cost effective, typically $18 to $20, $25 usually, to buy 1,000 ad impressions, an ad impression being one ad in front of one person. They reach people all over the place. They're usually viewed most of the way through. They're most of the vendors I use, at least, I'll get 60 or 70% completion rates on these videos because they're unskippable. And you can maybe get some clicks, usually not a ton, but you might get some clicks through to the website, which helps with name recognition. Now, you can balance that versus streaming ads, right? The streaming ads, they're in the middle of a show, somebody's watching, they're often on a bigger screen, very hard to skip. Somebody basically has to turn the TV off. But they are much more expensive. You're going to be paying 2, 3, maybe 4 times sometimes as much, probably more like 3 times, but as much for streaming ads as for online video ads. So for most of us, streaming ads are more like what Cookie Monster would say, that they're a sometimes food, right? Where the pre-roll programmatic video is usually the bread and butter. And so I'll have a budget breakdown in a sec. Let's talk real quick. Like search ads, again, good for targeting people when they're interested, good for rapid response if people are searching for whatever the scandal is. Be sure to run names on opponents. You might run ads. So the problem with YouTube ads, Google ads, content network ads is that you can't do voter file targeting at all. Google does not allow that. You can do some very basic demographic targeting and some geographic targeting. Now, podcasts, niche publications, these are all in influencer marketing. These are all very different, right? Because you're going to people on places that they're already paying attention. So, your average influencer is going to have an audience that cares about certain things. So if that's an audience you need, but you might also, look at email newsletters, like the political newsletter in your state. It might be a good way to get in front of potential donors. So just these are, again, not like a exhaustive list, but just some of the considerations that go into making these allocation decisions. So now this is based on an advertising campaign that I ran in June. So we had a $7,000 budget. We had, I'm going to change, I changed some of the details here, but this is about how I would allocate it these days. If I had $7,000, or if I could do math, yeah, so 7,500 grand, $7,500, I would put the bulk of it into pre-roll programmatic video. The ads that are showing up all over the place in front of videos people want to see. I might put as much as 2,000 into streaming. Banners, they're relatively cheap. I can get a lot of touches on people for less money. So I'm going to toss some money into that. And these are purely for name recognition. And then I'm still going to put some money into Facebook. Now, if you're a down ballot campaign and a small budget, you're probably going to be putting more into Facebook than this, because just Facebook is so approachable. If you only have $1,000, you're probably going to spend most of that on Facebook. But for a campaign like this, where I have a big enough budget to reach people in a lot of different places, I'm going to focus on programmatic, supplement it with streaming and banners, and then put some money into Facebook, as much for the volunteers and the supporters as anything else. But you just kind of want to be out there. And a campaign like this, I would estimate between 1.5 and 2 cents per voter contact. And I would be able to reach about 25,000 voters, maybe 15 plus times a piece. So I'm doing very careful demographic targeting to make sure I'm getting the right people. So some good practices. Understand the medium. Video ads have to start with a bang, right? people will just not, especially on Facebook, if your video ad doesn't catch their attention in the first 2 or 3 seconds, they're gone. Keep the candidate's name on the screen all the time. It's hard to get, ad people who get very excited about their creative to do this sometimes. Repeat the ads. You're trying to hit somebody 15 or 20 times. Appeal to the heart, not the head, just like the puppies and kittens there. On social ads and Google ads, you're probably going to want to do a lot of testing. It's a little more involved than some of the other platforms, but especially on Facebook, you can test different pictures, text different messages. You can try to reach the same people several ways. Maybe they're going to see you on TV. Maybe they're going to hear you on the radio. They're on a sports site and they're going to see your pre-roll video. They're on their local news site and they see your homepage takeover. And experiment with different targeting options to try to reach people that you really need to reach. And also keep an eye on the delivery. If you've got ads running, check them every now and then, because sometimes they'll just stop running. Maybe there's a glitch or there's a bug in the ad. But with Facebook in particular, I go back every couple of days and just make sure they're going. So here's an example of testing real quick. You'll notice the text is different between these two ads, but the photo was the same. So I put the same amount of money behind them. The one on the right reached a lot more people, which Facebook rewards you for good performance. So that told us something, one, about this ad, but also about the messages that were going to resonate around wind energy there. List building. Sometimes you're going to link to a petition on your own site, like these two examples. In this case, the ad is basically just sending them to a URL. But Facebook has a built-in tool called lead generation ads, where someone can sign up for your list just from within the ad unit, and it pre-populates their information. But it's not a magic bullet. There are a lot of people will test linking to a petition on their website versus lead generation ads. And sometimes one works better and sometimes the other works better. And by better, I mean, we acquire people more cheaply. Here's a partial example of a media takeover. This is from the Post, obviously. What I didn't screen capture was the huge Planned Parenthood banner across the top. You can see the ad on the side there, along with Maria Butina, who is now in the Russian parliament. And then there are other Planned Parenthood ads on down the page. But they invested in taking over the front page of the Washington Post, at least for people who are reading it in the District of Columbia. And then this is that hometown project that I mentioned. And in this case, this is these are the ads for local candidates that I'm running with the celebrities. I use primarily pre-roll video with a little bit of streaming, some banners, and then a little bit of Facebook. Again, more for the volunteers and the supporters than anything else. That's we've already talked about most of this. So thank you. It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. And the ebook there is available at epolitics.com as a PDF or a Kindle ebook. And I'm very happy to chat. I'll talk to anybody for half an hour, y'all. So
I did want to, I wanted to launch that last poll. A lot of people have been asking for vendor contacts. So, there's an obvious reason you do this with Colin, not only as a person, but clearly knows this stuff. So if anybody does want to speak to Colin separately, just click yes here. We don't like to send out any kind of spam, so that's why we ask explicitly. If you want to chat with Colin, we'll make sure he gets your info and you get his info. And then some people were asking for other vendors. So we could include some names of people that we might have worked with and know do a good job. Colin is certainly one of them. So we'll make sure to get you all hooked up here. It's also important to know, someone asked about pricing. Everyone does it differently. Some people just say, hey, pay me $250. I'll do a couple of graphics for you. I'll help you get set up on Facebook. Other people say, I won't work with you unless you're doing $10,000 a month in advertising. It's just a matter of finding the right group and what they're going to do for you, and of course, finding the right budget. So that's obviously.
Yeah, just following up on what Craig said there. Again, if you're running locally or regionally, there are probably firms in your area that you could work with that know the ground very well. Again, there are some great firms out of DC. other individual practitioners like me. There is you also potentially have the option to work with folks who specialize in your state, your region, or your demographic, right? Like my friend Chuck Rocha specializes in outreach to Latino audiences. So yeah, there are a ton of folks who know what they're doing out there.
And just as a follow-up, Kurt had asked if there are other webinars that we can send over, and even just some general information. Kurt, yes, and when we send a follow-up email, we'll send some other resources that help people get started with ads. Colin, we did something I think last year about some of that. We also have another one coming out in the next 2 weeks about some ad budget stuff. We'll cover that as well. And then anything else related to social demographics. Andy, if you scroll up, I pasted that link from the Pew Research Center. If you weren't on when I pasted that, and for some reason you can't see that in the Zoom chat, I'll make sure to include the demographics and social media channels in the follow-up email. Usually we take the video, it takes about 24 hours. We had closed captioning for accessibility. We've had a lot of people request that. So we'll add that and I'll send along any of the links that we talked about, along with Colin's contact information and some additional info for you that related to resources that we did.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah. And definitely include the link to that list building webinar we did last year. Yeah.
Yep, I made a note to send that out.
Excellent. Excellent.
And we're over time. I want to be respectful to people's time, certainly Colin and anyone else. We still have a lot of people on, maybe 1 or 2 more questions and then we'll try to end if anyone has any additional questions, just drop them in. Drop them into the question area. Ruth said the Q&A came and went too quickly. Interested in more information. We can make sure to send you contact info and also some additional resources. Probably in the next 2 weeks, we've done close to 20 webinars in the past year. Several with Colin now and with some other digital vendors on different topics. Email lists too. Avoiding spam boxes and even how to use NGP tools together, mobilize, things like that. So we will make sure to put those up. We actually don't have a webinar area on the website yet. It could be up probably in the next 2 weeks so that you can get links. I also include a link to the YouTube page, which has the video portion of it, not the text, but the video portion that you can see. A lot of those webinars. It can be your conference.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks again, everyone. And thank you, NGP Van and Bonterra. I really appreciate the opportunity. And you can tell I'm very excited about these tools. I think there are just so many good options out there that down ballot candidates can really use to get the most out of their limited resources. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much again. Thanks, Colin. Really appreciate the partnership and the information. I know we covered a lot of info. It's probably, like drinking from a fire hose here, but we'll send the deck in the next 24 hours and that will be replayed. And there are a lot of people asking questions about the county parties and things like that. I think that's fantastic to help support the candidates, whether there's just general support. So we'll include some resources there. Andy asked that, hey, I'm like, they probably any other questions? Just reply to the email that comes directly to me or Donna in our office. We will get you copies of the videos, resources, any other things that you need. Yes, actually, we do provide a transcript of the chat, so you'll get that as well. So anybody wants to look at some of these links that scroll by, you'll have that. Please excuse me if I can't really fast and get to that. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all. Talk to you soon.